You ever think about quitting?
It's the combat of life hammering the snot out of you.
Well, stand by, dig in deep, and get ready to get fired up with us.
Welcome to the Team Never Quit podcast, the #1 podcast that inspires you to fight on. I'm your host, David Rutherford, here with Mr. Never Quit himself, Marcus Luttrell.
Our mission is to help you embrace the suck of life, to teach you the values of working your ass off, and to interview the most hard-charging people on planet Earth.
We know life is hard. It's time for you to suck it up, Buttercup, and let us teach you to persevere in every environment imaginable by sharing real-world lessons learned by those who never quit. That's right. It's time, Marcus, for us to help them defeat the negative insurgency in their lives.
You fire me up. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's roll.
Let's roll. 2,103, Marcus. 2,103. That's how long our guests spent in captivity.
5 3/4 years.
5 3/4 years. I can't even wrap my mind around, like, 2 days, dude. I know you got a handle on that, but I can't even begin to imagine what that must have been like. And what everything that when I went back and started doing the research on this cat, right? When we started looking up about what the Hilton was about Vietnam, incarceration, man, that place was, I mean.
Yeah, and we're not talking about 5 3/4 years of, incarceration in the United States prison.
Where you get three hots a day, you get to watch Oprah.
This is the Hanoi Hilton, where you're being tortured. We're going to get into the details of this.
Let's slow down. Let me just welcome our listeners before you get into reading what you're going to read about the Hilton, man. If you are listening, a first-time listener to the Team Never Quit podcast, first off, I'm one of your hosts, Dave Rutherford. We're here with the Wizard and Mr. Never Quit himself, Marcus Luttrell. And what we want to do is welcome you to our show, to our community, right, Marcus?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's what we're building here.
Team.
We're building the team, a team of resilient, gritty, never quit people that are going to support one another when the going gets tough, the tough get going. That was in Stripes, wasn't it? Remember that? That was good.
Is that when he goes, keep going? Yeah. He runs out of the deal, no one follows him? Oh, no, I thought it was Animal House.
Yeah.
Animal House.
That is Animal House.
Yeah.
I think he says it somewhere in Stripes, too, but that just might be my TBI talking. All right, so what I want to say is, man, this show is going to set you up for a base of knowledge that is going to blow you away. I can't even begin to tell you. I mean, you think about in our lives how often we feel trapped. We feel trapped in our professions. We feel trapped in relationships. We feel trapped in our own minds through doubt and fear, almost incarcerated by what the obstacles and the adversity that's in front of you. Well, we're bringing a guy on who has a whole mentality, a philosophy of living, and 2,103 days couldn't crush his spirit, man. And so if you're a first-time listener, stand by for that. If you're coming back and you're regular, thank you so much. We are so blessed with your dedication to us. We are so blessed with your loyalty and commitment to us and helping us spread the Team Never Quit podcast word, because that's what we truly need, man. That's what we are all about is through word of mouth, you going out and finding somebody that you know that is in prison, right? That is locked down and can't figure out the right key to unlock themselves from whether it's a self-imposed imprisonment or it's the external world that's around them. Man, send them to our show, please. Let us help them, because that is our mission in life right now. When the Wizard and Marcus and I sit around and we talk about who we want to bring on this show, man, we're out there combing every demographic, every group, every industry, every walk of life to try and bring somebody that you can connect with or somebody that you know that they can connect with too. And that's what our mission is. If you want to know more about us, go ahead and check out our website at tnqpodcast.com. You can follow us on all the social media platforms out there. And I'm telling you, it's really just a powerful thing. And quite frankly, we got I want to put this out there. Marcus, you got a big one coming up here. You guys are going back out on a Patriot tour here soon, aren't you?
October, yep.
October. You're doing a show in New York, right?
Philly and New York. We finally made it.
Man.
Broadway.
Is it really going on Broadway?
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Well, I'm not, one night, but still, they said, yeah.
I tell you what.
Jay-Z says, man, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere.
Oh, amen. I think it's going to be one of the best shows, the best couple shows you guys have all done. So if you're in New York on October 19th, man, go find the Patriot Tour. You won't want to miss this night of patriotism. We've got Marcus on there. We've got Taya Kyle. We've got Chad Fleming, the one-legged badass Army Ranger. I love Chad, man. And who do we have? Who else, brother?
Goggins.
Goggins.
Oh, yeah, it's kind of one of those deals where the personal enjoyment I get and the reason I do it, man, I love seeing Goggins and Taya and Chad and all them, how their lives have just taken off and grown. I mean, Taya,
Amen.
It's not because of Patriot Tour, but being on the road with them and then watching them from us starting down there to how and what they are now is man, I love that. It's great. And it's kind of one of those deals where we never could get into New York or into Philly, and we just kept
pounding away. You never quit.
Ran into that wall.
You never quit.
Yeah, you got to prove yourself to get into those places.
Amen.
Amen. When I found out we were going to New York, boy, I'm excited. I'm pulling out all the stuff. It might get weird that night, bro. I mean, it's all come together on that one.
I love it. Now, if you're interested and you want to go see these shows, go to patriottour.com and you can buy tickets for your whole family. I mean, this is a family event. Get out there, go a night. You are going to be overwhelmed by these people. They are so dynamic and their stories are so amazing. So please get out there and go support them. All right. Captain Charles Plumb, 5 3/4 years. I think what we need to do, dude, what we need to do is we need to have the wizard talk a little bit about, explain to our audience just how horrific the Hanoi Hilton was. So, Wizard, could you?
Yeah, where he spent 2,103 days.
Yeah, right? His home.
Yeah, let's read this to kind of paint a picture for everybody that's listening out there. Thank you to Christopher Mays, as well as some various other accounts from places that were pulled together to make this. What is the Hanoi Hilton? The Ho Lo prison, nicknamed the Hanoi Hilton by American POWs during the Vietnam War, began as a French colonial prison. It was built over a period of 15 years, from 1886 to 1901. Then in 1913, it was renovated to hold 600 prisoners, and that crowded to 2,000 by 1954. The prison and its poor conditions were a focal point of hatred and resentment of French rule among the Vietnamese. Locals dubbed it Ho Lo, translated as fiery furnace or hell's hole.
That's a nice name, isn't it? Hell's hole.
Yeah, so who was in the Hanoi Hilton? During the Vietnam War, the North Vietnamese repurposed the prison to hold POWs, and the North Vietnamese government used extreme methods of torture on Americans to extract information. They justified torture by claiming that the Americans were political prisoners, not prisoners of war, and therefore not beholden to the same rules. Much of this torture occurred in the infamous Blue Room. Among those housed and tortured at the prison, notable names: Senator John McCain, Admiral and Medal of Honor recipient James Stockdale, and Brigadier General Robinson Reisner. Reaching up to 110 degrees each day, the combined stench of human waste and sweat made it nearly impossible to breathe. The torture was constant. The Americans were thrown in tiny cells, slabs of concrete for beds, single bare light bulbs, making sleep impossible. They were in a constant state of starvation. POWs at the Hanoi Hilton regularly had their legs strapped in irons or stocks. The bindings were usually extremely tight to cut into the legs, causing lacerations and infections. On top of that, soldiers were faced with the grim reality that when it came time to relieve themselves, being strapped to a bed face up for days on end. They had to do it as they lay there and marinated it as rats and roaches crawled all over them.
Jesus.
Yeah. In the words of Congressman from Texas at the time, Colonel Sam Johnson, as a POW in the Hanoi Hilton, I could recall nothing from military survival training that explained the use of a meat hook suspended from the ceiling. It would hang above you in the torture room like a sadistic tease. You couldn't drag your gaze away from it. During a routine torture section with the hook, the Vietnamese tied the prisoner's hands and feet, then bound his hands to his ankles, sometimes behind his neck, sometimes in front. The ropes were tightened to the point that you could not breathe. Then, bowed and bent in half, the prisoner was hoisted up onto the hook to be hung by ropes. Guards would return at intervals to tighten them until all feeling was gone. The prisoner's limbs turned purple and swelled to twice their normal size. This would go on for hours, sometimes even days on end. Aside from leg irons and stocks, both of which were used on me for months and years on end, the meat hook was the favorite instrument of torture within the Hanoi Hilton. Can you imagine that?
No, I mean, what drives, and what's crazy to me, and I don't mean to jump here on you, but man, you think about what human beings are actually capable, the horrific nature of with which people can incarcerate and demoralize and just butcher people for the sake of doing it, right? And it really lets you know just how we operate, not only with our prisoners of war, but the moral integrity that we have. And I think that just makes me feel better as an American, man.
Absolutely. You're completely right. The sadism is truly incredible. Let me keep going here. Some other forms of torture. They used ratchet-based police handcuffs, dubbed as the hell cuffs. These were tightened to the point that they dug into the skin, cutting off circulation, such as the victim's hands would turn black and nerves were compressed, causing damage. Or POWs in turn there were hardly ever fed, as the Vietnamese used starvation as a form of torture. When they were fed, prisoners were given watery soup with human feces and or rocks. Many POWs were forced into uncomfortable positions on stools, then bound in place with ropes or handcuffs and left for long periods. This could go on for days, during which prisoners had to wallow in their own urine and feces. They could not sleep or rest. If they fell over, guards would put them upright again. Lieutenant Ron Storrs had been made to stand, for example, on a stool for 7 days straight, beaten nearly to death by a bamboo stick continuously. A guard named Mouse liked to throw buckets of ice water on prisoners during winter nights when they were bound to the stool in irons or forced to kneel. One soldier held out on the stool torture for 33 days. Another example, while being transported to Hanoi after being shot down, Captain Jim Mulligan's captors poured gasoline over his bound arms, fusing the threads of rope into his wounds. Captain Plumb, who we're going to talk to here shortly, vividly described the conditions of his captivity at the notorious Hanoi Hilton as, I had a 2-gallon bucket that served as a toilet. The tin roof turned my cell into an oven. There was the taste of salt from tears, blood, and sweat that never ceased. I had boils which covered my body and caused my eyes to swell nearly shut. A rag tied around my waist was my only clothing. And I routinely faced starvation and torture at the hands of the enemy. Now, numbers as far as prisoners of war, we looked into this, it can be a little complicated. There's some that documenting exactly how many were taken, how many were lost. There's missing in action as well as POWs. So the numbers here are, I don't know how confident we can be about these numbers, but it gives an idea. We checked this against various sources, but somewhere around 1,000 Americans were taken as confirmed prisoners of war. Of them, 115 died in captivity. The actual number is likely higher because many of the denizens of the Hanoi Hilton and other North Vietnamese prisons died and are considered missing in action.
Wow. I tell you what, man. I think anybody that can survive through that kind of insanity and be square, I can't wait to hear that, right? Yep. How the hell did they get through that and maintain being squared away people? Because you look at the success rates of those cats post-life incarceration, there's some pretty exceptional human beings, man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's a long list of
really
came out the other end of
accomplished
that,
human. I mean, incredible. Stockdale, after he became an admiral, Medal of Honor recipient. He was even a vice presidential candidate with Perot back in.
Right.
Yeah, man.
Perot.
So, dude, I cannot wait to hear what this guy has to say. What do you think, Marcus?
Me either. I mean, that's heavy. I mean, just from I know how bad 5 days suck. That just keeps rolling in my head. I mean, how bad 5 days suck.
Wow.
5 years, right? 5 years.
5 years.
So roll in my head times 5 years.
I don't know if in my opinion, I don't think it's something that unless you go through it, you can't put it into words. What words can you?
No. We sit here and witty banter and chin wink back and forth all damn day and try and rationalize what in the hell he went through, man. But the mindset is something, and it's an isolated prison, man, and you can't get there unless you've been there. Period.
That's for sure.
Period.
You know what we can say though is that a POW, particularly in this case, that story is so the epitome of never quit.
I think the reason why those guys don't have PTSD is you hear about them guys that been through the ringers, right? It's one of them deals where they were in it so long that anything other than what's going on
in the now,
man, is it's just kind of. I
gravy.
know what stressful is, right? And
Yeah.
I'm not there at all, and that's got to be such a relief that you just like everything is jovial.
That's awesome.
That's kind of the way I'm like, man, I know where the hell I'm not. Everything's good. That kind of deal.
Well, let's hear from the source, man. What do you say? Let's get Captain Plumb on here so we can hear from Mr. Never Quit himself, man. Captain Charlie Plumb. What do you say, Jen?
Can't wait.
Absolutely.
Marcus, what is the most important thing that we have in America? What is the most important thing that when you wake up in the day and you take that breath of air, you check out your opposable thumbs, you stand upright, and you go live the American dream? What is the component of that just feels so good? It's that blanket we wrap around. It's that cape that we fly and do awesome stuff with. What is it, brother?
Are women?
That's
Not so much
answer.
for all
The
of
flag?
us. Not so much for
I had to throw that out there. I had to go there, bro.
Thanks a lot. Not so much for
I had
all.
to walk into that one.
The freedoms and protections afforded by the Constitution and Declaration of Independence.
Wizard, why are you so smart? The freedom of the Constitution. The freedom.
You guys set me up on that one. Y'all planned that out before I came in the door.
Negative.
That was so good.
Absolutely. got
Women
that.
was my answer as well. Don't worry.
So, what better person, seriously, what better man who understands how valuable that concept is, understands the depth, understands the blessings, understands the gratitude for it, understands just the presence that it is in our lives than Captain Charlie Plumb. And so, without further ado, man, sir, it is an honor to welcome you to the Team Never Quit podcast. Thank you for being here.
Really a great privilege to be with you guys. I'm honored.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, sir, I have about 15,000 questions that are, just raking at my prefrontal cortex to throw at you. But before we get into that, before we get into the meat and potatoes of this show, what we got to do is we got to warm up. We got to limber up a little bit, got to do a little stretching. Marcus has so much metal in his body. So we're going to warm up with something we call the Mad Minute to develop that.
Oh, I know the Mad Minute. That's going to be my first rabbit hole.
We're going to get along famously. They won't ever let me go down right off the bat.
All right.
You guys ask all these millennial questions, and I can see that lava lamp on your desk. I know that you know a little bit about my story, my history.
Well, sir, when I was doing my research in your opening video to your speech, you start out with the Doors. I'm a huge Jim Morrison fan. In fact, I'm
you
trying.
Like the Doors?
Yeah, so I figured
You're not that old.
I love the Doors. I thought I was Jim Morrison in
I'm
college.
a big Doors fan as well.
So what I figured is we'd have this lava lamp going back for when you were a hippie when you got back, right?
You know what? In my day, though, they were black and white.
The lava
You got-
lamps?
Yeah, everything was black and white in my day. You got a colored lava lamp. What's with that?
Well,
Improves the trip.
I guess. Yeah. Things on drugs.
well, you
It's
know,
our
it is
on-air
all-
light.
It is our on-air light. I love it. All right, so let's get going. Marcus, are you ready? All right, fire away, Adam.
All right, so first car.
First car was a Rambler American 220.
Oh yeah, I know it.
Yeah. It was the cheapest thing I could find.
Nice.
All right, I
Wizard.
got another vehicle question, slightly different though. I want you to
All
give
right.
us one aircraft that you never have but would love to fly, and one that you would have nothing to do with.
Okay, an aircraft
the
I
best
would
and the
love
worst.
to fly would be a P-51 Mustang from World War II.
Awesome.
The great airplane. An airplane which I would not like to fly would probably be the Spruce Goose. You know,
Oh, nice
Howard
pull,
Hughes.
man. Yeah.
Ah, I love it.
Texas boy, what's
you know, Howard Hughes got that thing about 16 feet off the water and set it right back down. I think he was afraid to fly it too.
Right by Catalina, right? Yeah, it was the famous
yeah.
historic flight,
Yeah.
right? Wasn't that thing where each wing was a football
Is that where
field?
that was at? It was Catalina?
Yeah, it's right off Long Beach Harbor where his factory was. Awesome. All right,
P-51.
you're on a roll, sir. I dig it. Okay.
I'm still scared.
If you were stranded on a desert island, I know that probably gives you chills, but if you were stranded on a desert island and you had one DVD or one CD to choose from a particular band, what band would it be and what album? The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, or Led Zeppelin?
Beatles.
Okay.
And I don't know. Is that one? The picture on the album is him walking across the street.
Abbey
Forgot-
Road.
Abbey Road.
Abbey
Yeah,
Road.
that's it. Yeah.
Awesome. I love this guy.
Favorite superhero?
Now I know you guys have all these superheroes with their capes and climbing spider webs and stuff. My superhero is MacGyver.
That is
No, I
my
love this
favorite
guy.
answer.
I
to that
I
question
think
ever.
roll of duct tape and some baling wire.
Chewing
I think
gum.
anything.
The chewing gum with the foil. Always.
Yeah, that's it.
That guy had a great haircut too.
Dude, he had the party in the back going and that fluffy
Business
jacket.
in the front, party in the back.
Hey, they have those on the iTunes. You can watch all the episodes. Airwolf. I thought I've been down on mine. It's weird.
You've been in there, Rabbit.
Been down.
You got caught,
I have,
haven't you?
yeah. MacGyver freak too.
All right, Wizard, shoot.
I gotta admit, MacGyver was one of my heroes. If you could give truth serum to any one person for 10 minutes,
Oh, boy.
who would you give this to? Who would you give it to and why?
I hate to get political on this, but I'd love to know what's in the head of Hillary Clinton.
Amen. Fascinating, wouldn't it be?
It would be.
From
Yeah.
a psychological perspective, fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
We actually, but when the election was going on, we had Donald Trump Jr. on, and I actually reached out to try and get Chelsea Clinton on. We had some friends of my family are big donors, and we tried to get up. We obviously we didn't get a response, but we made the effort. Okay,
No.
if you could travel back in history and have a day with someone in history, just a full day, you and them hanging out, who would that be?
Well, Jesus Christ would be my first thought.
Holy cow.
It'd be neat to get to know that guy for a day.
I'd
Right?
say so.
Right?
I'd say so.
Definitely, that's the leading answer so far for that question.
Yes, it is. Hands down.
High
Thank
five.
you. Marcus, shoot it.
That answer just totally blowed my question down. I was going to ask, all right, the new Death Wish is coming out. Charles Bronson or Bruce Willis? Who's the best man for that job? But now we got to totally ruin that. I can't follow Jesus with a Death Wish question. You know what I mean?
Still have to follow Jesus.
Yeah, don't follow the Jesus, man. All right, movie character you'd like to play out in real life?
A movie character, boy, I had to give that some thought. Tom Cruise, I guess, in Top Gun.
Nice.
Thought he was so cool.
Sir,
But
Right.
that's
Sir,
been you, correct?
sir, you did that. That
Yeah.
was you.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah,
he was playing you, and I'm a.
No, I totally want to. Yeah.
I'll tell you what. When we get Tom on the show, I'm going to let him know that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as a man who would know, when Tom rides the bike down the flight line, any possibility that would have ever happened?
No.
That's what we figured.
Yeah, that's been a burning
Yeah, we
question.
had to ask.
We didn't have any instructors like Kelly McGillis either, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, right? Right? Okay, question. If you could time travel, would you rather go into the future or go back in history?
I'd go back in history.
Why?
The future is too scary. I don't think I really want to know what's going to happen.
I like that. All right, I got one. If you could be president for one day, what would you try and do in that day? And you had broad sweeping authority too. So
Term limits would be my first priority.
oh, God
Get those
bless
suckers out of there.
you. God bless you for saying that, sir.
Everybody talks about that. How come that's not a thing yet?
Well, because
You're not
the
going to vote
people who-
yourself out of a job.
Yeah.
right?
Not supposed to
Well,
be a
unless
job.
you have integrity.
It's supposed to be service.
Well, it's not the deed, it's the glory, right? Wait a minute, I
Moving
got
on.
that backward. all right,
Great
all right.
answer.
Sir,
But moving on.
outstanding. Well, that's the end of our Mad Minute. We really appreciate it. Your answers were incredible and awesome. But now we got to get into really the meat of what this show is about. And sir, we did this because we felt we had to continue our mission of servitude in life. And the best thing that we believe that we could share with people out there is this never quit mindset that we've been so blessed to receive from our time in the teams, from our time and our amazing experiences in life and our faith. So people come here to find those stories, to really give them something that will stoke the fire in their gut and get them in the game, so to speak, to give them the tools to endure the combat of life and to really move forward. So please, sir, without further ado, would you please share your greatest never quit story or stories?
Let me tell you my first never quit story. I learned never quit from my grandmother. Lenora Plumb was her name. She buried 2 husbands and raised 9 children total
Oh, my.
on 120 acres in the Ozarks. I don't know how they measure those 120 acres because it was all like 45-degree hills. And so I don't know if that was from above or from the side. But she had 120 acres of rock. I was living in Kansas, Liberty town of 325 souls and a couple of Presbyterians. You guys didn't get that joke?
No, we got it. We got it.
So, but I got to spend I got to spend the summers with my grandmother down in the Ozarks. Okay, and that's where I became a Republican. And down there in the Ozarks, she was a big lady. I mean, huge lady. In fact, I was 6 years old. My cousins were a little smaller than I was, and she'd hug them, and they would just like disappear in her wrinkles. She was.
Those are the best grandmothers.
So, but my job on her farm was to gather firewood. Now, this was before electricity or plumbing or air conditioning or anything else. You know, she had. I mean, this is really basic dirt farming in the Ozarks. Every morning, my grandmother would make these biscuits. You know, sourdough biscuits every day. And my job was to collect the firewood to stoke this stove because there was no gas or electricity. It was a wood stove, and I had to do this early in the morning. It was like 5 a.m. in the morning. Well, the beds were feather beds, plucked from the down of the geese, that she raised. And so, man, it was really nice and warm. And I slept in one morning, and she couldn't cook her biscuits because I didn't bring in the wood. And I see this big lady, in the door, and she comes in, and that's how I became a Republican, because she took me and she put me over her knee with a peach switch and bared my little bottom, and she hammered on me, and she said, "You little Democrat, you." Now I didn't know what a Democrat was, but I sure knew I didn't want to be one.
Well, that's one way to do it.
And yeah, and from that day forward, I never quit. I never quit bringing in a wood.
Oh my God! I mean, that's awesome, man. And getting a switch, getting a beat down, put them in the right mind frame.
Yep.
Is that your only one? You got another one for us?
No. I teach I teach my kids never quit as well. My first son Joe was training wheels on his bike, and I was in a marathon at the time, and so I would jog along with his training wheels. Finally, because when he'd fall over, my mantra was Plumbs never quit. Plumbs never quit.
I love it.
And anytime he'd fall down and skin his elbows, Plumbs never quit. So I'm jogging along, and we finally took his training wheels off, and he could ride on his own. And I'm still jogging, hanging on in there. Well, this jogging path went right along a cliff, and it was kind of dangerous, So I had to be with him as he was riding along. And so he's about to turn the corner. But by now, he can bike faster than I can run. And I know he's about to turn the corner towards this cliff. And I, Joe, slow down. And he turns around. He's like 4 years old. Dad, Plumbs never quit.
Unforeseen.
When your lessons go deeper than you could imagine.
Yeah, and they can keep coming back at you, too,
Oh, that's awesome. I love it.
Amazing.
I love it. Marcus, you talk about that all the time with your old man growing up.
Well, same kind of grandmothers. They were the ones who led the charge on everything and raised the men. And then whenever we got out of line, the grandfathers and the father would come in, pound you back into shape, right?
Yeah, they would.
Absolutely, man.
I love it. So, all right, as you growing up and you've got the never quit mentality, and obviously faith is a huge component, where did the concept of servitude to your country come into play, sir?
I'd love to tell you guys, that I always wanted to serve my country and be in the military and be a Marine or something like that. But the reason I joined the military is because I needed an education. And so at age 17, graduated from high school. I sent my resume to everybody trying to get scholarships. My parents couldn't afford to send me to school. And so I had to have a scholarship and work my way. And I'd been throwing newspapers and mowing grass and shoveling barn stalls, all my early life. So I knew how to work. But I wanted to get an education. Well, I got an appointment to Annapolis, and surprised everybody. I had no idea what they did at Annapolis. I really didn't. I'd never planned on this. I didn't know what it was. And so I got on that Greyhound bus in Kansas City, Kansas, and 2 days later, I was at Bancroft Hall, and that's the way it all began.
Wow. You had no. I mean, obviously, from your generation, and there were certainly men around you that had been in service in World War II. There were people around you. So there was a heightened sense of patriotism. Did you understand the magnitude of war and warfare and the implications of it at all?
Not really. Yeah, most of my uncles and two of my aunts, these 9 kids that my grandmother had, were all in World War II. They were all military. And so I knew of them, but I was really too young to understand. I was born in 1942, and so the war was over when I was 3 years old. So I didn't really know them while they were in service, but just heard the stories when they came back. So, but seriously, I was a Boy Scout, and I was patriotic, and wave the flag and play in the band and all this stuff. But as far as thinking of myself as a warfighter, that didn't come along until I joined the Navy.
That's awesome. One of the things we talk quite a bit about are the reference points we're able to take with us further down the road. So what we experience going through Hell Week, we're able to apply in difficult situations in combat. And Marcus tells at length about it when he talks about his experiences. And when you're a plebe going through in that freshman year, I'm certain, did you have any concept that those lessons you were learning as a person in Annapolis, that they would play any massive role like they did later on? I mean, were they able to instill that in you?
I could see that, the commonality. I could see the parallels, but I still didn't see myself as a prisoner of war. I really, I guess I always thought that I'd be on the high road of all this. And, plebe year was tough. Certainly wasn't as tough as Bud's, but it was harassing, and there was a lot of physical stuff back in those days that we endured. That's outlawed today, but and so I grew up, learning the lessons, and as you guys know, the more discipline you see in the military, the more devoted you get to the mission. Right. And so I sort of, as I went through the 4 years at the Naval Academy, and I think especially the plebe year, I gained, first of all, a lot of respect for the service and a lot of dedication to being a warrior.
Wow.
But I still had no idea. I still had no idea what it was going to be like.
That's a real thing, what he's talking about.
Yeah.
My last platoon, a buddy of mine, he was one of our officers. I asked him, we were out there one day, and I was like, man, how'd you wind up in the Naval Academy? He's like, I had no idea, man. I just wanted to play soccer. He was like, you didn't want to be a SEAL? He's like, no, I didn't figure that out until I got there. All I want to do is play soccer. I didn't even know. This guy's great, man. And, but as he's telling me this, I'm like, well, here we are, and in the best place on the planet, Ramadi, Iraq.
Ramadi, Iraq.
That's where soccer got you.
Here's your wish
That's
come
why
true.
we don't play
They
soccer.
love that game here.
They play soccer in the streets here.
Yeah, if you would have played football, man, you probably wouldn't be here. You'd be in in the league, probably.
Clint
Right.
got Clint there too. One of the things that we love to discuss here, especially for our listeners, because a lot of society right now is pushing towards almost an isolation, right? Where we come so closed off with this social media, right? Through our connectivity, we're gaining more distance from each other emotionally, cognitively, behaviorally. But it's in these training programs that you really develop core friendships. And then you have to lean on those core friendships to improve yourself dramatically. Can you describe some of that in your experience at the Naval Academy and what you started to understand about that sense of rank and structure and the way you commit to one another?
Absolutely, and you're right. That kind of training sure paid off in the prison camps, and it was kind of amazing how guys sort of took leadership positions in the camp that you saw that they had taken back at the Naval Academy. I had 5 classmates as prisoners of war. Wow. And we were class of 64. Class of 62 had 5 people as well. And 2 at the Naval Academy, 2 classes ahead were the ones that ran us the hardest. Okay, so we learned to hate these guys because it was an awful lot of harassment. In fact, one time in the prison camp itself, I'm out and I have a chance to grab hold of a wall and reach over the top of this wall, pull myself up to see the guys on the other side. A guy on the other side absolutely was the devil. I mean, he was red. He had horns. He had flames coming out of his nose. And I fell off the wall. I fell backward off this wall. It scared me to see this devil right there. And I went back, to my prison cell. And what was this? It was one of the guys from the class of 62 who had run the living bejesus out of me as a plebe, and I remembered him as the devil, and he appeared in the prison camp as the devil. Wow,
talk about your mind being able to...
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, my gosh, that's amazing.
Of course. From the, then of course, in a different light, in a different role there, he became a great leader and brought us all together. Another guy had been my flight instructor at the Naval Academy, and he had treated me pretty bad too as a flight instructor in primary flight, and and one of my first times in communicating with anybody else in the prison camp, because we were all kept in solitary confinement, I've seen this window, and I know that there's a prisoner in the other side, and he said, and I hear this guy say, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm Charlie Plumb." I said, "Who are you?" He said, "I'm Paul Galante, your old flight instructor." And I said, "Well, why the hell didn't you wash me out?"
Oh my God, that's awesome.
I wish you would have graded a little harder, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you, Sir Mark, did you have any guys that were instructors in any of your platoons?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man. I'll never forget this as long as I live, man. We had one, Instructor Getka, and I love you, brother, but you did, I mean, I remember, you remember Getka, right?
Oh, he was the devil himself.
Okay,
oh, yeah.
So this
just
was,
like
I was back from 18 Delta. I think I was at the command, but I was back in San Diego out playing golf by myself. I just kind of wandered onto the course. It was chipping into the deal, and I hear, "Latrell, are you going to get the out of my way?" And I froze, and I mean, I kind of almost urinated on my, you're getting ready to go to the surf. Anytime he talks to you, man, everything just goes instinctual.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what, when you were talking about peeking over the wall and seeing the devil, I remember out when you're kind of by yourself, you draw back to your instincts, right? So whatever emotion you had or developed for whatever it is in front of you, like an animal, right? So it was the devil, and then you had to relearn to, I remember that, and I've got to know Mike real, better, but I'll never forget that. I don't know if I ever told him that either, man. I just heard his voice behind me. I was like, "Ooh!" I got cold.
I was
like, "Here we go, baby."
Because he's
a great instructor, man. He's the reason I made it through training. But oh man, I'll never forget.
Another one of my instructors I ran into in a prison camp was John McCain. He was my flight instructor in Meridian, Mississippi. He taught me to fly jets.
Wow.
And he was a tough instructor. That guy. The instructor sat in the back seat of these jets, and I was in the front seat. He couldn't reach my head, but he had a knee pad, a metal knee pad, and he would bang on my helmet with his knee pad. I was doing something wrong.
How irritating would that be?
I love it.
Yeah.
One of the
he was shot down 5 months after I was, and so I was the first guy to see him in the prison camp.
Did you get him back? Did you hit him on the head at all when he came back?
Yeah. No, never paid him back for that.
Awesome. Well, if you don't mind, because you are creating the framework for the next kind of stage of where I'd like to talk about this is we have these connections to the people who play such important roles in our development in life, right? Whether they're our instructors or we're going through class with them. And then all of a sudden, when we're in extreme environments, we need to lean on them. We need to put our faith in them, so to speak. And so, could you kind of frame out, as you guys moved into the position where you realized it was going to be a long haul, how those relationships were built? And was it difficult, and just describe how you guys connected on a collective and then on the personal level.
Absolutely, and it was critical. First of all, let me tell you a statistic you may not know. Of all the Vietnam veterans, 30.6% have PTSD. Of the prisoners of war, 4% of us have PTSD. Pretty amazing statistic.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, we've come home. 591 of us came home. We've produced 17 generals and 7 admirals. Most of us retired as senior grade military officers. We've got doctors and lawyers and preachers and teachers and 2 ambassadors from our number, 2 United States senators, a bunch of congressmen, vice presidential candidate, a presidential candidate. And so they're telling us we're doing better, healthy mentally and physically than the guys who didn't get shot down.
Wow.
They compare us every year. I have a physical and mental exam, and they compare us with a control group of fighter pilots, because that's most of the POWs were fighter pilots. It was an air war. We were being shot down. So this prison camp was all fighter pilots. Then what the psychiatrists and psychologists believe, and I believe too, it was exactly what you're talking about. It was the connections that we had. It was the leadership that we had. To a man, everybody I've talked to anyway, we felt guilty because we'd given up. You know, you guys have had those feelings. You
Absolutely.
know, when you don't do your best, when you didn't try as hard as you wanted, when you didn't make it over the bar. First of all, you feel guilty that you let your buddies down. You know, my squadron mates, and then to have given up, and we all, of course, because we were prisoners of war, had given up, and we felt just very demoralized and felt that we were victimized by these little people that caught us, and it was pretty grim. One of the first things I remember was in the prison camps was a kid, couldn't have been 13 or 14-year-old, and he was a guard, and he had a rifle, which was taller than he was, and he brought his girlfriend in to show her how tough he was, that he could beat up an American. Of course, I was the American.
It was your day.
Yeah, it was my day. Yeah. Hi, folks. Well, and so you know, we were very depressed. Some of the guys will tell you that they even considered suicide rather than have to go back and face the country that they had besmirched. You know, we just felt so low about that. Okay, some of my first communication said, "Hey, here's the good news. We have an organization here, a team like none you've ever played on. We have leadership here, unbelievable. Our leaders can't see us. They can't fire us. They can't restrict our liberty. You know,
right.
They can't. They can't promote us. They can't give us a bonus. They can't hire or fire. But oh, by the way, this is the finest leaders you will ever see." Well, Jim Stockdale at the time was the SRO, the senior residing officer, and he put out the word, "Hey, we are not victims. We are warriors. We are combatants. We will fight to our last breath to defeat this enemy. So put on your big boy pants, get out of your pity party, and let's get to work." And he gave us a mission, a purpose, a raison d'etre, and it really made sense. It didn't make sense at first, you know. Here I am. I'm a Lieutenant JG. Okay, I'm thinking the brass down in the in cell has come up with all these rules for me to follow. You know, I mean that's all I need. You know?
Great. Is there a watch bill? Grab the mop. Here we go.
Yep. And yet, what I saw come together was, in fact, the finest team I've ever played on, because, you know, we were all responsible for the life of every other one, and they were responsible for our lives, and we didn't take that lightly. That's pretty serious stuff. And you know, there are a number of guys there that I would say saved my life, and they claim that I saved theirs. And so it was just that tight a group, and it was because of that we not just survived that experience, but we thrived through the experience. And came back better off than had we not even been there.
Wow.
One of the interests, when you talk about this, I'm just trying to imagine, because, right, we live in a life of highs and lows, and you know, I've watched a couple of your speeches, and you talk about the whole concept of having someone pack your parachute every day, and that really resonated with me, sir, even though I hate jumping, but that really resonated with me because, you know, that's what we need. We need, because nobody's perfect. Nobody can maintain a full reservoir of willpower day in and day out. We all break, right? I mean, I was good friends with a CIA interrogator for a while, and you know, I remember the first time I was like, "Dude, you could never break me. I'm a Navy SEAL." And he was just like, yeah. And he says, "Everybody breaks, Dave. Everybody."
Yeah.
And the concept in that breaking point is really the beautiful aspect of relationships and the love that you can have for another person. Where you guys, even though you know, Admiral Stockdale set this rigid bar of that you are still in the war, did it require a heightened sense of emotional connectivity, a greater emotional intelligence, or was it more of, hey, pull your panties up, sweetie?
Well, all of the above. As a matter of fact, it did certainly require a heightened sense of who we were and what we were there to do. But redefining the mission, it tended to be the thing that kept us on that track. And when I think of all your never quit philosophies, I think, well, sometimes when you face a big problem in life, not necessarily a military, but a civilian problem or a commercial problem or something at work, if you can redefine the mission, find a way to work around it rather than work through it, you can keep on going, maybe just a step at a time, but you can keep on keeping on. But it did require that. It required a lot of communication, and the only way we could communicate was tapping on a wall. In a silly code that took hours to get across an idea, and so it was. It was a heightened sense, of where we were and what we had to do and the mission itself.
Absolutely. You trained by the same body. You actually, they just took your planes away from you. You just became a ground platoon. And I've talked to people, and they're talking about, man, I don't know if I'd had the patience to sit there and tap on that wall that long. I was like, well, patience go out when you got shot down. As a matter of fact, patience go out when you join the military. This is discipline we're talking about here. And it's not like I have anything else to do, right? You know what I'm talking about? I can't watch. I don't have a TV in the background, catching my attention, and it's all on whatever's going, and then you got the boys watching your back. If I'm correct, all that comes into play because we're trained for one reason, and then that's the new mission. It's like, all right, I was chosen to represent the United States of America right here, and I got to do whatever I can till the boys come get me. And in the back of my head, sir, I was always, I like to tell them, I was like, hey, man, my boys didn't rescue me. They came and got me. You had something that belonged to them. I have this voice in my head that I think the military as a collective would sound like.
Right.
Oh, yeah, you got one of ours. We coming. Stand by. When that storm hit, and they were like, oh, it's thunder and lightning. I was like, no, that's them. That's my boys coming down, right? And it's one of ours. You become so tight-knit, especially when you get into those situations that you can't get out of. All that training just comes down into focus. And, man, the level of love is I don't know. That's probably not the right word for it. Because
that's a good word for it. No, it is love.
The pack mentality.
It's just unconditional love you got for your brother, and that's why you're there. But your point about the focus when you have nothing else to think about, and it really worked because especially when you're in solitary confinement and it's dark, and a lot of prison camps. I was in and out of 6 different camps, and some of them. Had no lights at all, and they were in valleys with mountains on both sides, so you had very little light. Some of them you couldn't distinguish green from red in these camps. Well, when you have nothing else to do, in our average life, in a day, we have hundreds of thousands of inputs, smells and sights and sounds and all the stuff that we're experiencing in a prison camp. They gave us nothing to do. We had nothing to read. We had no radios, TVs, telephones, nothing to do. And when your mind is in that state, you become very creative. And you can go back through your mind and recover all kinds of stuff you never thought was in there.
That's cool.
And even today, I kind of miss that solitude. I'm a mountain biker, and I bike to the top of the hills around here, and I do it alone. I love it alone, just because I have that quiet peace within my mind, and I think everybody should do that, with prayer or with yoga or whatever, just to give yourself a little bit of solitude.
Some great advice.
Most of us were we were all college graduates. We had masters and PhDs and guys that knew a whole lot about a lot of things. And so we taught languages, French, Spanish, German, Russian. We taught each other, biology, and I taught a course in sailing. I'm a sailor. Yeah, it was really fun because how do you teach a course in sailing in a prison camp? But I'd take a piece of brick on a concrete floor and draw out lines and winds and sets of sails and all this stuff. And about 2 weeks after I came home, one of my buddies called me up and he had rented a sailboat. This is an Air Force guy that knew nothing about the water. I'm not even sure he could swim, but he got in a sailboat and then just took it right off the dock.
He can damn sure sail, though. What's up? They got life jackets for that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, one of the guys had learned a lot of poetry when he was young, and I love poetry, and so he would pass a line at a time through the prison wall, and so I know several thousand lines of poetry. We would memorize the poetry as he sent it through. One of the poems that he sent through was one called "The Highwayman," and it's about this. You know the story. Let's see. Wind was a torrent of darkness among the gusty trees. The moon was a ghostly galleon set upon cloudy seas. The road was a ribbon of moonlight, looping the purple moor, and the highwayman came riding. The highwayman came riding up to the old inn door. So here's the Robin Hood,
That's
steals
beautiful.
from the rich, gives to the poor. Okay. And it was really interesting because it was like watching the old serial movies, because every day you get another line of the story. Well, the highwayman falls in love with the landlord's daughter. Okay, Bess, the landlord's daughter, the landlord's black-haired daughter. Okay, and so he falls in love with her, and so he promises her that he's going to go out and get the gold and be back tomorrow morning. Okay, and so here come the redcoats. The redcoats set a trap for the highwayman by putting Bess in her window with a gun underneath her chin, and they're going to threaten to kill her unless the highwayman surrenders. All right? Okay, and now remember, this is a line at a time, a day at a time. We're learning this story.
Oh, my God.
They got her set up, and it's a midnight, and here comes the highwayman, clop, 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 back into the courtyard. But Bess, all right, the landlord's daughter, has squirreled away from the ropes that were tying her down and got her finger on the trigger of the gun. So she's going to kill herself and warn him with her death, all right? Now, so we're passing this along, line at a time. And I'm getting it from one side, passing on to Jerry Coffey on the other side. And so here we were. Here he comes. And do they hear him? Clop, 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 clop in the distance. The horse's hooves ring clear. Ta-da-ta-da-ta-da. And that night, the Vietnamese come in. They move Jerry Coffey out of his cell in the middle of the night. Now, we went to GQ whenever that happened because we didn't know if they lined him up and shot him in a ditch or what, okay? So the next morning, first light, we get on our communication system. We're tapping on walls and tugging on wires and wheezing and sneezing, all the ways we use to communicate. Where's Jerry? Where's Jerry? We finally got it. We found him in the far corner of the camp. They just moved him to another cell. Jerry, are you okay? Jerry sends back, yes, but what happened to Bess?
Oh, my God.
We sent back KIA, Jerry. KIA.
There is something so profound about looking at life in the beauty of what the arts can give us, about what education, about what things to stretch our imaginations of what's possible in our lives. As you guys went through this roller coaster of you're all right, you're going to be released, you're not going to be released, you're going to be released, we're not going to be released. Did that place for all of you, did it ever dissipate, or did you always have true faith that you were going to get out?
It was never a day I thought I was going to die there. Now, I was one of the optimists because I thought, I'd always set these goals. Okay, home by Christmas. When we weren't home by Christmas, it would be, home by Groundhog's Day, then home by Easter, then home by the 4th of July. And so there was home by Thanksgiving. And so there was always a short-term period of time that I felt that I was going to be released. To me, that was helpful. That was positive. But nobody I knew in that prison camp ever thought we were going to die there. We knew we were going to go home. We just didn't know when, how long it was going to take.
How could you know? I'm sorry. How could you know that? I'm trying to, as you're telling this, I'm trying to imagine myself in the same position. And I'm wondering, how could you be so certain of that?
At like year 4 too, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, well, in a way, it was sort of survival mode. It was because my thought was, hey, I mean, if I think I'm going to die, probably going to die. If I think I'm going to live, at least I got a chance I'm going to live. And I felt from the very beginning, hey, I'm not going to kill myself here. You know, I that's what the enemy wants me to do. If I die here, they're going to have to exert some of their energy to make this happen. They're going to have to pull me out of here feet first.
I love it.
So this was this was a concerted mental effort to affect your state of mind. Is what
Yes.
you're saying? Yeah, you're fully aware.
Yeah,
of its
certainly.
effect.
And you know, I mean, I realized this my state of mind, and you know, I had a pretty good control over it.
I'd say so.
To stay positive was not difficult for me to do because I knew I had to do that just to survive.
Would you have prior to this called yourself an introspective person, or was that something
Yeah, I
you
think so.
developed as you had so much time to think, basically?
I was an introspective kid, and so you know, I mean, I thought a lot about thinking.
Yeah. I love it. I love
It's
it.
hard for people to understand that why would I kill myself, because you ain't been in it. And all the training we've gone through, man, I never had that feeling I had when I knew that I was there. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And in the beginning is the chaos. And it's funny, yours was Christmas. I wasn't out there long enough. And I don't know how we figured this time. It was 10 o'clock at night, right? There was a helo supposed to come in at 10 o'clock at night. And after they had snatched me back, the villagers had snatched me back from the Taliban, they had stuck me in this hole, right? And I was in there kind of head first. I think my feet were hanging out a little bit, so I had to pull my knees in. And my back was broke, so I was kind of having some problems with it. Well, 10 o'clock is when that helo was supposed to come, and when 10 o'clock was getting close, I was like, hey. They put a guard on me the second day, which was great. And I was like, man, that's just to see somebody. That you kind of that gets to you as well. I mean, even good, bad, or indifferent is kind of like, man, all right, I know he's there. And then I remember pointing at my watch, and it was 9:42 or something like that. And this helo flew over the top of our head, and it wasn't there it was looking for me, but they didn't know that I was right there. And I was like, man, we got to be on time. And then the next day, I waited till 10 o'clock, and one didn't show up. And then next day, and then I was like, all right, no more 10 o'clocks.
I can't take
I was like getting stood up on a date day after day.
Totally.
You know, speaking of, I may live through this. During the first torture session that I was in, one of the happiest moments while I was being tortured was when I figured out that they weren't going to kill me, that they got me pretty close to death, and then I could see them ease up the ropes. And it was, I don't know if I smiled or not, but I sure felt happy when I figured out that, they know there's a limit here, and they don't want to kill me. And from that point on, I figured that they're not going to intentionally kill me. Probably.
Wow, that must have been so freeing for you to now emotionally and cognitively move into spaces where you can have mission focus, you can set little goals, you can actually construct a framework of existence under extreme captivity.
Yeah, that's very true, and it really did. It gave you the freedom to put that framework together.
Wow,
and not fear death from that from that point of view anyway. So.
That's amazing.
Awesome. Melanie, before we came on, first she wanted me to tell you specifically, sir, that if she ever meets you in person, she's going to throw her arms around you and give a giant hug to you because that's the way she is, right?
All right.
But she gave me this great question to ask you because I know how important faith was there for everybody, and faith is a huge deal in our lives too. When you were in that solitude in your mind, was there a particular piece of scripture that you would reference, or how important was that, and what did you rely on? Where'd you lean on?
Well, it was vital to me, and I think anybody, when everything else is gone, when all of the material things of life that you always use to identify yourself, all that stuff is gone. The airplane, the uniforms, all that stuff. You look for the things that are ethereal and spiritual. And I served for 2 years there as chaplain.
So cool. That's so cool.
At the Naval Academy, we had what we call the Officers Christian Union, and so it was preparing officers to be lay leaders aboard ships where chaplains weren't available, and so I took that course and got involved. So I knew a little bit about it, but I certainly didn't feel ordained. but when I got into the prison camp. And so I led a church service. Of course, we had to have it secret. We'd post one of our guys at the door to make sure that no guard was going to catch us in prayer, because they'd beat us up if they thought we were praying or singing or anything else. But Scripture, probably the most important Scripture to me was Romans 8:28. All things work together for those that love the Lord. And I picked that word for word. I'm thinking, wait a minute, all things work together for good, even in a prison camp, and all I have to do is love the Lord. Yeah, and so I thought I'm going to see if this really works. I'm going to test this one out.
Because what a great experimental place than a prison camp.
Yeah, I'm a test tube here.
Well, you got his time.
I'm a petri dish. And obviously it worked. And it's so easy. It's simple. Most of faith, we try to overcomplicate. We try to figure out reasons why this isn't going to work instead of just trusting that it is going to work, and it works. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, tell Melanie that I appreciate that question, and it really is true that that faith was a very, very strong part. Part of the plan, that Stockdale came up with, and part of the organization was levels of resistance. And so we had various levels of resistance. Well, in my prison cell, we had quite a few guys in this little prison cell. We decided to go on a hunger strike to get a Bible. And we did. We passed back the pumpkin soup and passed back the rice and said, we're not going to eat and bring us a Bible. The interesting part was I had 3 guys in there that considered themselves to be atheists, and they didn't believe, and they were part of the team. They were going to go along with us.
Wow.
But by the way, they didn't care. And one of them was second in command. All right. Well, so the first thing when we announced to the enemy we're going to go on a hunger strike, they cut off our water. And as you guys well know, you can live a long time without fish heads and rice, but water about 2 days and
you start to go crazy.
Thirsty.
Yeah. God dang.
The second thing they did was they pulled out our senior guy, who was a fundamentalist Christian, and was in charge of all this. Of course, now I'm the chaplain, and so I'm involved as well. But I'm not senior. I'm a JG, and this guy was a commander. So they pulled him out of there, and so here's the atheist. All right, he's got to make this decision as to and I'm watching this, and I'm happy I'm a JG, but
right.
I'm watching what's going to happen. And the atheist said, "Continue the strike." So we still continued our hunger strike, and we got pretty thirsty about the second day, and then. I hid a nail. I'd found a nail, and I hid this little nail, and I started burrowing into the hole into the cell wall, and made a hole through that prison cell to the guys in the cell next door. And they weren't on a hunger strike, and so and I put a tar paper tube in this hole, and talk about MacGyver, right?
That's it.
Yeah, and so they poured half their ration of water into the tube, and we caught that water on the other side, and we're going to survive, okay?
Oh, my gosh.
They eventually came back in with a Bible, okay? And it was a tattered, torn, dog-eared old copy of the King James version of the Bible. And we had it for one day. We didn't know it at the time, but we had it for one day. And of course, I was the chaplain, and I was in charge of the Bible. And everybody wanted to come up and just put their hand on the Bible, just touch the Bible. And my three atheist buddies were at the front of the line.
There are no atheists in foxholes or prison camps.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yes, very important.
Did just on a side note, and then we'll switch directions a little bit. But did those guys who didn't have faith directly in Christ or the Lord, did they have a level of faith in each other, though, that was reverent?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, in reality, they had a deep faith in something almighty. They just didn't know how, they didn't know how to verbalize it. They didn't know how to define it. But I think they knew that there was a master plan here, and they wanted to abide by it. But certainly faith in each other. I mean, that was just a given from the very beginning. That's all we had was each other.
Now, I've heard another interview where you talked and you referenced this in your new book, I'm No Hero, about the insanity that can ensue in terms of captivity, and you give one particular incident. Was that fragility of the mind something that you guys had to deal with as a collective on a regular basis? I think
that it really depended on the individual. The case that you're talking about in my book, I talk about a guy who was tortured to insanity, and we certainly tried to strengthen each other and in our mental state. And if we saw a guy getting really down on himself and crawl over in a corner and curl up and in the fetal position, and we'd go over and talk to him and talk him out of that and try to bring him back to a sense of purpose and a sense of positive reality. And so, yes, we certainly tried to help each other out in our mental state. The guys, I don't know. I think the guys who had the problem, there weren't very many really that had any mental. There were a couple of guys that attempted suicide. It got that bad for them. But I feel like that they probably had those tendencies even before they got into the prison camp.
Right.
Because most of us, really didn't want to die.
I'd say.
Let me. I'm curious a little more detail on because obviously this is an extreme example. These guys that you're talking about that went into these dark moments. What did you find to be most effective in? What would you say to these guys? What would you remind them of? What technique really seemed to work well?
Pull them out, right?
To bring them back.
Yeah, talking about home and talking about mission, talking about the purpose, why we're here. And, you got a wife and 2 kids back home, and they're counting on you to come home. They're praying every day for you, just like we're praying every day for them. And this is bigger than you. Taking your own life is no solution. Even being depressed that's no help at all. You're killing yourself. And not only that, but you're feeding right into the enemy's plan. They love it. They love it if you killed yourself, and they love it when you go into depression. I mean, this is part of the war, is staying positive. And so it was basically just a reminder of home and family and purpose and each other. You can't let us down by being this way. You have to pull your own weight around here. You're a link in the chain, man, and we can't do it without you. So that was sort of the context of how we tried to bring guys back, and it worked.
One of the things that I really focus on is this greater belief that there's this ever-present and perpetual negative insurgency coming at us all the time, right? Mm-hmm. You had it in its most sadistic focus imaginable. Did you guys develop any techniques or tactics that really helped kind of, confront that insurgency against you, distract that insurgency, or was it more, hey, by the more pain they put on us, the stronger we get? How did you meet that insurgency from these very malicious, sadistic guards head on? And also, on a little side note, was there ever any compassion or empathy from them?
Well, I'll answer your second question first. There was only one guard in my entire time there. In the 6 years I was there was only one guard that ever showed any compassion at all. And he was a brand new hire that came right out of the jungle, and they gave him a rifle and told him to to guard these prisoners. And he spoke no English, and we spoke no Vietnamese. And but he would joke around with us, and they had issued him a brand new pair of boots. And so he walked in with his new boots on and a deck of cards. And so he's going to play cards with us. And we decided, what are we going to bet? Well, we had these rubber-tired sandals, these sandals made from old tires. And the tubes of the tire were the straps of the sandal. And so we, just with charades, pointing and grunting, we decided we're gonna bet our sandals against your new boots. And of course, this is a little kid, We taught him to play the game of war. You lay one card down and whichever's the bigger and all that stuff. And he beat us. And so he picked up our rubber-tired sandals and he walked out with them.
And whoever's idea that was, you're like, good job.
Idea.
Yeah, great idea, Plumb.
Yeah. But he brought him back a few hours later and laughed. And then they sent him off for their indoctrination. And he was gone for 3 or 4 weeks, and he came back just as mean as all the other guards.
Oh, wow.
It was disappointing the way they could train these guys to be mean, and they did. Let's see, I've forgotten your first question.
How did you face the
negativity?
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. We did it a lot with humor. Humor became a very important part, of our existence, of our survival. And we would play little tricks on the guards, and it really gave us a lot of self-confidence, just to think that we can get the best of these characters. So a lot of their negativity we would turn around with some humorous anecdote or a little trick that we would play, and some of it was just really stupid stuff.
Such as what, for example?
Well, let's see. We would steal something from them that they didn't know. Like if one of them had a pin or a bracelet or something like that was laying around, and we could pick it up and keep it for a while. It was a big deal if we could keep our hand in the cookie jar.
Little wins.
Just
small
a little
victories.
Bit.
Small victories.
My co-pilot and I were, of course, shot down, and he parachuted out, and I could see his parachute. I knew he was going to be all right. And then he put us in 2 different Jeeps to haul us into the prison camp, and they tied a rag around my eyes, and I think I was delirious, because when I heard him, I said to him, this country is 100 years behind in blindfold technology. Why I would say that, I don't know, but it's just, like you say, it's one of those little quips that
they took. I couldn't walk. They were having to carry me everywhere, and my legs were sliding down. I had my boots on. It was one of the things I had left. They were tied on. And for whatever reason, they thought it was my shoes was the reason I was slipping. So they pulled them off my feet, and I was like, well, "Hey, it was dark, God, dog." And then all of a sudden, this dude comes walking up with these, the movie Vacation, Clark Griswold, where those white shoes that he gets, and they brought those out. I was like, "Oh, look at these Griswolds right here. What are you going to do with those?" And they were 2 sizes too small, I think, and they were cramming them on my feet, and my toes were all. And that's where they were dragging me up that mountain. I was like, "Oh, this is good. I can great traction out of these suckers, man." I mean, where would you get those white leather kind of whatever
you look
shoes,
good.
man?
Man jams and Griswolds.
Man jammies on and those shoes.
Man jams and Griswolds. Oh, God bless.
I'll never forget that.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for sharing those details about the friendships and those connectivities and those moments that got you from one day to the next. what about afterward? Obviously, you know, and you're it comes to an end, and then the next chapter for you begins for all of you. Is how do you look at that day forward? When you got home, you got off the plane, all of a sudden you're free, you're back in the United States. One, how long did it take for that to settle in? And then two, how did you build the new framework for your life?
Good question. I had planned my life out for the next 20 years. I'd married my high school sweetheart from Kansas, and we were married under the Arch of Swords the day after I graduated from the Naval Academy.
Awesome.
And so I planned the next 20 years around her. And, you know, at first I planned sort of a medium career. And after I wasn't home then, I thought, well, I'll plan it a different way. And so I had what I call saunter, buster, and gate. These are fighter pilot words. How you going to go to the target? Saunter, buster, gate. And so, you know, I had, you know, kind of meander my way through, make commander, retire after 20. That was okay. Or buster was going to be, no, I wanted a squadron. I wanted to get into test pilot school. I wanted to be a Blue Angel. And gate, you know, was going full bore. You know, I'll be at sea all the time. I'll command an aircraft carrier someday, and maybe even a fleet. And so I had these three different ways I was going to propose to my wife when I got home. Well, when I got off the plane and made the phone call, she was gone. And I called my parents back in Kansas. What's happened to my wife? I'll never forget my mom's word. Bless her soul. She said, son, I'd give 10 years of my life if I didn't have to tell you this, but your wife filed for divorce just 3 months ago. Oh. She held on for 5 years, and then she just couldn't take it anymore. And so I was left kind of hanging there without a plan. And I was at Great Lakes Naval Hospital for the first 2 weeks after I was home, and they, you know, during that experience, one of my prayers during that POW experience was that that the experience would have some value, that the pain that I was feeling then would lead to something positive in my life.
Amen.
And so, but I still hadn't figured out how that was ever going to work. Well, I was the first guy back to the Midwest, and everybody wanted to know the story. So I agreed to be at a press conference in the basement of that hospital. And I was surrounded by 150 photographers and reporters, and I told my story. On the way back up to my hospital room, as the elevator doors closed, this young reporter came in. I was face to face with this guy, nose to nose, young guy, but he had lines of anguish in his brow and tears in his eyes. And he said, Mr. Plumb, you really got to me in there, man. I've had a miserable year. My family's falling apart. My job is terrible. He said, I even wondered if I wanted to go on living. He said, you've given me hope.
Amen.
Well, you know, and my thought was, wait a minute, I didn't mean to give you any hope. I'm just telling a story of a Kansas farm kid that got into trouble. You know, wow. What's it? You've given me hope, but suddenly I recognized there was value in the experience itself, and so I wrote a book, as you say, my autobiography, and it's in its 32nd printing. And if you don't have one, you're underprivileged.
Congratulations.
And thank you for the book, sir, that you sent to Marcus and I. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. And I autograph every one of those that's ordered from my website. And so happy to do that. But, you know, it's the same thing you guys are doing. And I really, really appreciate you telling your stories, because most veterans, most Vietnam veterans, and certainly nearly every World War II veteran I've ever run into is reluctant to tell his story. And I think it's just vital that you guys tell the stories of Buds and the challenges you faced and the combat that you faced, Marcus. And so anyway, I saw a purpose in life. I saw a reason to hang in there and start telling stories. So I wrote the book, and I started to promote that book. I made over 400 presentations the first year I was home.
Wow.
And that was 43 years ago, and I'm booked well into the middle of 2018. So,
good for you. God bless you.
See if we can't keep that going.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm still telling the story, and the key, and you guys have seen this just as I have, the key isn't that it's a war story. It's a story of a guy with a problem. And we all have problems. And whether your listeners are civilians or students or retired or military guys, I mean, everybody, or women, children, we all face these challenges in life. How do you get through these things? Well, you don't quit. You never quit.
That's a great point, though. I mean, a lot of the people out there, the civilians that are having the problems, man, a lot of the answers are been solved in military, in combat, or any military situation. The stories that you talk about, the guys are sitting on, and it's because it's, you know how it works, and this is why our country's so great with the civilians, that respect thing. They don't ask or pry because they weren't there, and it's usually not a good thing, it's a bad thing. And I heard from this kid, how do you say, he's like, you know, my grandfather was World War II, he never talked about it. And I was like, yeah, he did, he just didn't talk about it to you. You know, we talk about it with each other, and it stays inside. But every now, you know, when we get out and we come back and we become civilians, I think the civilians themselves, it's not that they want to know the story just because they think it's cool, man. They want to know so they can feel that emotion with you, and they can just kind of somehow relate to that different world that you exist in, and now you're trying to come back and exist in the one we came from. But you're right. I think that when what you've done, especially after what you've been through, man, it eases that tension, right? That reluctancy to stand away from those guys who went through the bad stuff. And most of the time, guys, you know, like, hey, man, I'll tell you what you want to know. I'll help you out. This is how I did this. It's no brainer. And you're right. The human element is what connects everybody. It doesn't have to be what job description or anything like that, man. We in a bad spot. You know what I'm talking about? We in a bad spot right here. And then, you know, you get back, there's other people who are going to walk that same line that we did. And, I mean, it's kind of incumbent on us to pass that knowledge down to help them out, I think.
I think God taps us to do it.
You know, I totally agree. And you know, my mother was so prophetic. She wrote a letter to my wife, my ex-wife, the day I was shot down. And the letter said, it's so terrible that Charlie is not going to reach his full potential because now he's been shot down and may not survive. But nobody knows God's plan. You know, maybe there's a bigger plan, then he will actually have more opportunity to touch lives of people because of the experience. And she said that the day I was shot down. So not knowing if I was alive or dead.
Sir, I got to tell you, the Wizard just brought this up the other day. We were having this very same conversation about trying to gauge the weight of the impact we had while we were in service versus the impact we have now. And we just, conducted an interview last evening, and at the end we usually read a reader story. And this reader story was about a man who was on the brink of suicide, who found our show, and now it's piecing his recovery back week to week. And so it's undoubted, there's no doubt in my mind that the impact that you are having specifically and the story that you share of your perseverance, your faith, the brotherhood that you were a part of, the ability to move forward and beyond that in a healthy manner, you are saving lives and impacting lives far greater than any plane you ever flew, sir. So I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate that, and I hope you're right. I believe you're right. You know, I mean, that's why I keep on doing. I'm 75 years old, and I'm going to keep on doing this as long as the Lord gives me air to breathe and a good wife to cook.
Well, there's no doubt about that in my mind either. As soon as you talked about the 43 years, and I just started thinking, my God, that's got to be an enormous number of people that he's touched.
Impacted.
So I'm with you on that, buddy.
Well, thanks. I've spoken about 5,000 times, a little over 5,000 times all over the world, and I've really been amazed, you know, at that the story has had legs that it's had, because I remember just a couple of years after Vietnam, I thought, man, this is ancient history. And the majority of my audiences today weren't even alive during my story. You guys weren't, and so But there's a thread. There's a constant thread there, and it's a thread of humanity.
Amen.
It's a thread of resilience. It's a thread of meeting challenges and finding solutions. So the end of the story is that I've remarried, have 4 wonderful children, I have 2 airplanes, a sailboat, and in fact, I just came back from British Virgin Islands, where my son commands one 48-foot boat, and I command another 48-foot boat, and we chase ourselves around Tortola. Life is good.
Can you, before we sign off, can you please share with our guests where they can find you, how they can get in touch with you, where they can find your books? Can you share that?
Sure. Appreciate that. CharliePlumb.com. CharliePlumb.com. CharliePlumb.com is my website, and I'm on Facebook and Twitter and all these things as well. I answer every email that's sent to me. So Charlie@CharliePlumb.com is the way to get a hold of me. And I'm happy to share and autograph a book for you. I've got videotapes and all that stuff as well. I'm on the speaking circuit as well, and so I talk to corporations and trade associations and churches and schools and like you guys do. And so I crisscross the country every week. A lot of airplane miles. In fact, for my birthday party, I'm cashing in just a few of my airplane miles and taking 25 of my relatives to Hawaii.
Oh, bless your heart. Bless your heart.
My son-in-law is a Marine Corps captain stationed at Kaneohe Bay in Hawaii. So they've invited us over there for my 75th birthday.
Have you been out there to Kaneohe? You been out?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, man. I spent a tour out there too.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool place.
Man,
that's awesome.
Yeah, of course. My son-in-law, stationed in Hawaii. You think really great. He's been deployed to South Korea.
Exactly right. Station Hawaii must be cool, right? Yeah. I don't know. My stuff was there. I guess it had a good time.
Yeah, my dog is there.
Yeah. He lived it up. Hopefully, he learned how to surf.
Right? Totally. Well, sir, thank you so much for coming on and for sharing with us and our listeners. There's no doubt in my mind that they can take away just countless points and just in and of itself just be enlightened by you and your experience. So we really appreciate it. I just love the fact that you are spiritual, and you are doing God's work. So thank you, sir.
Well, right back at you. I really feel a brotherhood with you guys. I've known several SEALs and just loved every one of them. You guys are really, really the backbone of America. Appreciate you. And if either one of you run for president, I'll be your campaign manager.
I love it. That's your brother's gonna definitely run,
right,
dude. That's Morgan.
Yeah.
It'll be Morgan, not Marcus.
We're twins, so it's
Yeah.
All right, sir. God bless you so much. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Here's the deal. And when you hear the story, what I couldn't stop thinking the whole time, right? Is that number. The number. And the number.
You're screaming that downstairs. I know, man. That's a lot.
2,103 days, Wizard.
In the interview, it was almost, he was so, with his personality and the way he talked about things and just his general tone and spirit.
Demeanor.
It was kind of easy to drift away from that. But even with, SEAR training, which I guess is as close as you can get to a taste of that, I can't wrap my mind around that.
Oh, you ready?
Good.
Are you ready? Are you ready for my SEAR training story? All right, SEAR training, right?
Yep.
This was back in the day. We're all going, and we, like Team 1, Team 3, Team 5, were doing takedowns on the SEAR school. So I had gotten the tip that, my class was good. A couple SEAL Team 1 platoons were going to do the takedown, and I was good, right? Mm-hmm. So I go into the space, and we're having fun, and there's a hilarious story about Gut and camouflaging his testicles, which was a whole nother thing, and I'll tell that later. But we get into this thing, And you go into the camps, right? And we're having fun, soft sell, hard sell. You have to pull off to the side because, hey, you're not playing the game. Or you're like, whatever, dude. They put you in the little thing, the box. And all of a sudden I start going, all right, any minute we're going to get out. Any minute we're going to get out. Any minute they're going to hit it, we're going to get out. Any minute we're going to hit out. It was not like I was in there for days. I was not in there for, any long amount of hours. But, dude, I mind blanked myself so bad. But by the time where we had the one, 18-year-old seaman who literally, who fell off the ship and he becomes the propaganda guy in SEAR, did you have that, dude?
Well, I clept out of SEAR. I'm the reason all the new guys have to go through it. Sorry, bros. I'm so sorry. I mean, I didn't mean to do that, but
The irony of that
yeah, because I didn't go.
cannot be understated.
Oh, my JP8 debrief started when I was in the hospital, and then after that it was SEAR. I mean, me and the SEAR guys are close.
Tight.
Yeah, man. I spent a lot of time with them jokers afterwards.
There is a tremendous amount of irony in that. There is.
Yeah.
So the point is I'm reflecting on 2,103 days, and I'm moaning about 8 hours in SEAR school in Southern California. It's unfathomable to me.
No. Here's the deal with that, man. And this is kind of the one thing where I have that perspective.
Yeah, I want to know what you think of that.
Yeah, so check this out. You guys are like, man, I couldn't, and I thought the same way, right? And even when you're going through SEAR school, the problem is that in a team guy's mind, you know that the instructors are our instructors, right?
Yeah.
That it's going to end, right? So you get put in a box like this bullshit, man. I got stuff to do, man. I got, I'm talking about.
I gotta go.
It's
sync
really
and
fucking
link my
annoying.
Exactly, but
55.
think about it like if it was like buds, like you had no idea, right? My point is, man, there's something that kicks in that I don't think it's kind of impossible for it to happen in the school environment.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Now, it may happen.
No,
to
I don't, but I understand what you're saying.
It may happen to the kids they send through SEAR school that aren't as trained as we are, but man, because of what we've already been through in that mentality, you know how when we go to SEAR school, we take it over, and then they're like, hey, we got to do this kind of deal. And even Morgan, he's like, when that dude slapped me for the first time, I was like, hey, don't do that again.
That first open palm.
That first open palm
oh
slap.
my God, I wanted to punch
Morgan
that
was playing
guy.
the game, dude, and that dude slapped me. He's like, don't do that again, dude. I mean, just think of some of the guys we got in our team, man.
Yeah.
I mean, those instructors have to be standing there going, this could probably go really bad. I mean, I'm
Imagine
looking
hitting
at
Tage in the side of his
Kevin
head.
or somebody like that, dude.
All right, so when he's telling this story, and I'm trying to keep it in that framework, but you are exactly right. For me, it was his positivity, right? How he delivered the message of probably one of the most difficult situations any human being can be in, right? Where your captors or the people who are against you, and this could be in your life if you're growing up in a shattered home where you're being devalued on a regular basis, right? Where the value, your integrity, what's the word I'm looking for? Your dignity is perpetually being stripped away. And that's their job. That's their mission. At an extreme level, to try and summon it up every single day to make it through the day to get to the next
that's kind of what gets burned away. I mean, all that white noise, that dignity, that pride, it usually messes with us when all this stuff happens, man. Then it's just survival, instinctual. And then once that village, once I got in there and they put their hands around me and I figured out what was going on, it was love, bro. I mean, love.
I loved how you described that, how Captain Plumb described it. Is that, isn't it?
I mean, you hear these guys that were in the, and first of all, man, 2,000 days comes out of there and is just walking tall. I mean, hell, I was out there for 5 days. How am I not going to walk tall?
Right?
I mean, he was talking about what his purpose is. His purpose is to show me what in the hell a warrior looks like.
Exactly.
And then my purpose was to, and you don't think about this when you're in. You're like, I could, just take it, man. This is stupid. Why am I doing this kind of? And then you just keep pushing, and you don't think about like, well, one day this kid's going to look up and Marcus went through Afghanistan, and he got out of the hospital and went back to Iraq. When I was doing that, that's all I thought about.
Right.
I had to have y'all around me.
Yeah.
I didn't know man, to separate me would have been bad.
horrible. And you think that's a huge component. Like he talked about it. The guys, you know,
I wonder if he missed those
Vietnam,
guys when they, talking about when they pulled him out of there.
Oh, he had.
Oh my God!
I mean,
Like,
to
we missed
exist
each
that
other.
long in that prison, you have to. I would assume he had to establish a new normal, right? Those guys would have just been an inseparable part of his new reality. And walking away from that, I wanted to ask him. We didn't have time. I was kind of curious. Was he afraid to go home? Because you hear about guys that get out of prison and they have a problem readjusting and whatnot. They've become used to that.
Yeah, man.
Not saying he wanted to stay there. Obviously
the
not.
Institutionalization.
But I wondered what, if he was a little concerned with, and you sort of asked him the readjustment, but.
Well, look at the success ratio of
he started rattling off all
the 591 guys.
That was super interesting.
Here's
If that
what-
doesn't tell you the power of developing a never quit mindset, I'm assuming that that's why they were so successful.
And those numbers, all that stuff comes from a book called Lessons of the Hanoi Hilton. So probably what we ought to do is go find the author of that book and see if we can bring him on to help explain some of that other stuff and get into it. But let's come back to what our listeners need to take away from this. In my mind, what you have to understand is that the relationships you create and the time, the small little things that you make and invest in the people around you when you're in prison, whether it's the prison of your own mind or you're in the prison of failure, whether you're in the prison of defeat, whether you're there in the prison of judgment or hatred or anger, go to the places around you where you know that love is true. And if that love is true, it lifts you up every day. And you have to lean on the people that you love, that you know they love you. That's what I took. What did you take?
I want to expand on exactly what you said, because that's one of the things that I thought was really important, because when we talked with James Lawrence and he talked about having the bucket of whys,
Yeah.
bucket of reasons, I mean, this is basically what you're saying. And I heard that immediately pinged in my brain when the captain was talking about what were you reminding those guys of when you were trying to bring them back from that dark spot?
Right.
Bring them back. It was basically, he was telling them, these are your whys. Have that bucket of whys. Have that bucket of reasons, those accountability points in your life to draw on when you need it.
Yes.
Be aware of them. Take the time to think about those things so that they're there when you need something to lean on.
I love it. Marcus, that was awesome, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, if
That was awesome.
you pack those as deep, even to the stupid ones, right? It's just that one that doesn't mean anything to anybody else, but meant something to me, man. That'll keep me going. That kind of deal.
Right.
Yeah.
But listen, if you're tuning into this show, I don't even know how to segue into that. This has been one of the most fun, but one of the heaviest shows for sure. Because when you talk about freedom, you have to conceptualize or take a crack at what it means to lose your freedom. And I think a lot of our listeners come here because they feel like their freedom has been taken away in some capacity, whether it's by their own choice or by their choice of their environment or by the people around them. So if you're listening to this show and you're not feeling free in your life, at least take this away from what Captain Plumb was saying. You can endure in the hardest things imaginable if you just have faith in something bigger. In particular, the team around you. In particular, being a part of something that's bigger than yourself. So the first thing you need to do to be released from your own incarceration is to become a part of something bigger than yourself. And that's what I hope you're hearing. And if this is your first time, welcome again. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. We love you. If you're coming back, you're a regular listen, God bless you. We are so thankful for you and your what you're doing for us. If you heard something in this show and you felt like you've been in captivity in some capacity, please write in and share with us how you got out. Share your never quit story about how you were released from the prison that you've been in your life. Please write into our website. It's incredible. We want to. If the story is amazing, we will read it on air. If it's incredible, Marcus,
We'll bring you on.
we're going to bring you on. So I just want to end one more time, as I always do. I want to give thanks to God and Christ for my life, for taking me out of captivity. I want to give thanks to my children, to my family. You know, more importantly, I want to thank the two of you. I mean, for what you do every day with me when we put this on, and how I feel and the freedom that I feel of what we're able to serve our listeners and thank our listeners. But most importantly, this one, I want to thank Captain Plumb, because that man and what he's done and the sacrifices he's made and what he does for this country and for the world right now is profound. And so thank you, sir, for being on our show.
Oh, yeah. I'm wore out, man. I'm all sweaty over here. What's up? I'm just going to, Captain Plumb, I'll tell you what, man, you keep doing what you're doing, and thank you for walking tall and coming back. And like I said, sometimes our boys get left over there, get dropped off in hell, and get drugged down there a little while longer than they should. And when they come back, man, and they just stand tall and live life no matter what, that in itself is, man, that's godly almost, right?
It is.
So thank you for that. Thank you for the lessons. I learned a lot from you today, absolutely. Take care of yourself, and God bless. I'm out.
I'm out.
Never quit. Team Never Quit Radio.